Kenya has put its citizens on high alert. They've asked all the citizens not to go outside, and they have put an indicator of a communication via the Kenyan embassy in Khartoum, asking them if they are in need of any kind of help, then they can reach the Kenyan embassy there.
Now, let's get the very latest in Khartoum, in Sudan. At least 56 civilians have been killed in the second day of fighting between the country's army and the paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces, RSF. The Doctors' Union has said dozens of soldiers and at least 595 people across the country have suffered casualties. Egypt and South Sudan have offered to mediate between the Sudanese army and the RSF. Welcome to Leila Mohamed, senior reporter at NTV in Kenya. Leila, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me this evening.
Leila, tell us what's the latest in Sudan. Unfortunately, we're hearing that the fighting has continued into a second day.
So the escalation has continued much into Sunday morning. What we've been covering is that there's been a huge dark smoke billowing over Khartoum city and many other cities in Sudan. Reports coming out of that city is that there has been an escalation of atrocities between the two groups the entire evening coming into this morning. And the doctors, like you have said, have reported 56 fatalities, and they're saying about 600 people have been killed. As of this afternoon, Kenya's President William Ruto was in an event in another part of the country in Machakos County, and he had to cut that visit short because he has to come back to Nairobi and join a very critical meeting by the African Union. And as well as IGAD is also having a security meeting as we speak. There are various other organizations, including the United Nations Security Council, as well as the Arab League. All of these organizations are sitting this afternoon, emergency meetings, to just discuss the issue going out of the Sudan. Kenya has put its citizens on high alert. They've asked all the citizens not to go outside, and they have put an indicator of a communication via the Kenyan embassy in Khartoum, asking them if they are in need of any kind of help, then they can reach the Kenyan embassy there. As at now, we are still holding on to information that maybe the Khartoum airport may be reopened, but that has not yet happened into much of Sunday evening as hostilities continue. As at 1 p.m. East African time, the Sudanese military was insisting that they have insisted on taking over the areas that were bases for the RSF, and they are saying that they're still in charge, as much as RSF is now claiming that they have taken critical areas in parts of Khartoum, Darfur, Merowe, including the airport in Merowe as we speak. And these hostilities are continuing, but the major issue is that the Red Crescent in the Sudan is saying that the humanitarian effort has been hindered because much of the area code around Khartoum city has been blockaded off by both forces, and it's not easy for medical emergencies to get to the hospitals. Some of those staff working for the medical facilities in those areas are not able to reach their places of work. Much of the city has been on lockdown, and as we are reporting now, there are students who have been stuck in various schools, and the areas that have been affected by the shelling are areas that are civilian residences which border some of these bases, and much of the humanitarian aspect. Some of those who have been affected are people who are civilians living in areas closer to bases for both the Sudan Army and the RSF.
Leila, what about the people of Sudan? From what it looks like, you have the president, who is the head of the armed forces, the deputy leader, who's the head of the RSF. They have come into conflict. We know this is over the main sticking points of handing over power from the military back towards civilian rule. So what are the civilians? What are the people of Sudan making of this? Where is their support?
Many of them are sad, and it's quite unfortunate that much of the rest of Africa has to follow what's going on inside Sudan via what we are seeing on social media. Much of how the people in Sudan are talking about is being shared on various platforms, including Twitter. And what they are calling for is that the two parties, the two gentlemen, ideally at the center of this conflict, to sit down and looking at how the engagement has been, and the Sudanese army insisting that they will not sit down for a military outfit, which they are now calling as a rebel outfit. And it's sad because if you look at the humanitarian aspect of children being stuck in schools without water, without food, and this is the last few days of the holy month of Ramadan. Majority of the Sudanese people are Muslims and they are fasting. So for them not to be able to have such basic necessities like food and water, and them not being able to get medical attention in various medical facilities is something that even the Kenyan president, as he was speaking and talking about that meeting by the heads of state for the African Union, the humanitarian situation for him was a serious matter because this escalation just happened on a Saturday, the last day of their weekend in the Sudan, and many of them had not really anticipated the escalation to reach the levels where it has, although we know that tension has been building between the two parties over the last few weeks, only to boil over in the last 24 to 36 hours. So the humanitarian situation by the civilians is that these two people need to sit down and cease hostilities immediately. And that's what everyone is calling for, whether it is the leadership within the IGAD or the African Union region, or even in the international community. Guterres, in his speech, in his communication, has said that hostilities need to stop, and for the humanitarian situation to be looked into, not to further escalate and cause more damage. But as we have been covering all day, the helicopters have been surrounding the major city of Khartoum, and shelling has continued in the last few hours.